This is an SM Media production. Hi folks, and welcome to your Wednesday Bulletin of the Scottish Football Daily News Show. I'm Scott Pike. It's a pleasure as always to be your host, and we're midway through the week. I hope you're all having a promising weekend. Everything's going well so far. Been a bit of a busy period in the past couple hours regarding to kind of news in Scottish football. Let's get right into it. We've got a fair bit to talk about. Let's start with what is going on as we speak. I was hoping to kind of got this off until the Celtic AGM is finished, but it is just kind of going on to the question stage now, so we might have a couple of things coming through as I kind of come on to you. But we'll start with that. Obviously, it's always one of the most fascinating days of the year. Celtic's annual general meeting. Just overall to talk about, it's the first one with Peter Lawwell back in the fold. This time as non-executive chairman. Obviously, in the years he was chief executive. Let's just go through the resolutions of what's been said so far. Just resolution 1 was approval of accounts. That was a 99.98%, no surprise there. Resolution 2 was the reappointment of Mr Lawwell. That was 99.61%. Remainder of recent re-elections: Brian Rose, Dermot Desmond, Tom Allison, Brian Wilson, Sharon Brown were all re-elected to the Celtic board. Resolutions 8, 9, 10, 11 all passed with an easy majority. So all the resolutions passed, and moving on, a few bits of update to come from the Celtic AGM. It was announced that contractors will move into Barrowfield, the old Celtic training ground, in December. This is hopefully the plan to be the site of the women's team and the B team going forward. I think that's an excellent thing. I think that's obviously, it's a base, it's ground that Celtic have had for a while that's been unused, so to get a base for the B team, the women's team, I think is a good thing. The question was raised about investment. Michael Nicholson, the chief executive, said that they were looking to reinvest in the first team in January. That will be music to a lot of Celtic fans' ears. Brendan Rodgers said that he was obviously very, very excited to be back at the club. He's hoping to kind of build on the success under Ange Postecoglou and return the club to where he was. A couple of things, obviously, that I think we're obviously going to raise their head, and it's not something that I want to delve too much into for the simple reason that I don't know enough about it and don't really want to know enough about it to explore it. The Green Brigade issue was always raised. A shareholder did say regarding that he wanted them permanently banned. It was met with mainly applause but a few boos. Lawwell intervened, telling those who booed to behave or leave. Fairly expected. Michael Nicholson also said stadium rules are about behaviour and safety, and we've had increasing concerns about safety. Obviously, as well, this is on the day that Celtic were fined. It came out that Celtic were fined for a provocative message against Atletico Madrid. That wasn't to do with the Palestinian flags that I'm sure we're seeing on the UEFA can't ban you for putting a flag of a country. They can fine you for a flag of an organisation, which I believe has happened here. They were fined £25,500 for that, for the game against Atletico, £6,900 for blocking of public passageways, and £3,000 for lighting of fireworks. Atletico were also fined as well for the lighting of fireworks during that game as well. So obviously this is a touchy subject. The AGM did turn into a bit of a slanging match about that subject. I think this is one of those that's going to go on for a long time, and I think it's obviously something that's going to be kind of raise its head later on. Just another few things. Obviously, Dermot Desmond, I think for something like the 20th year in a row, didn't attend the AGM, so it was no surprise. But his son Ross, who he insisted the club would not be sold in his lifetime. That was pretty reassuring for supporters. They were mentioned about the club's views on human rights with the kind of growing influence of Saudi Arabia. He said that as long as he's around, that the club will be in Dermot Desmond's hands. So obviously that'll be reassuring. Brendan Rodgers insisted that no players have been pushed onto him by the club. He said we have a structure and a set up, and we are planning for longer term in our signing strategy. and he said players like Odin Holm will improve with more time on the pitch. Couple of, again, it gets into this stage, and it does, and this is one of the, I'm covering the AGMs for a few years now, it does get to the borderline ridiculous, and we did see some things like questions coming up regarding the 5-way agreement. I think one of the big things Celtic fans should be talking about, and I know a lot of decent ones are saying about the club modernising in terms of European competition, but you have people on their AGM, they've one chance to ask a question to the board and they're asking questions about a 5-way agreement 10 years ago. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and just something that certain fans are never going to get out of their head. And it's something like, when you're you're talking about modernising a club, this is the sort of stuff, like talking about penalties and VAR. VAR should be brought up, and it's something we'll touch on in a second, but I just think it's absolutely ridiculous how we're still getting this. And the board, when the board are under pressure, they know very simple, we'll make a dig against Rangers and we'll get a cheer. And that is what we see here, and it's nonsense. One fan asked about Jota coming back on loan. Rogers said got a wee bit of a sninger actually. He said he'll ask Michael Nicholson nicely about that. Brendan Rodgers obviously away to speak to the media now. Peter Lawwell thanked those in attendance. I think it went as expected, to be honest. I think there are serious questions. I think a lot of Celtic fans will be wanting to ask about modernising and things like that, but it's something that we obviously need to see how that's going to. I think January is going to be big. Obviously, there's already talk of a potential striker coming in, so that's going to be very interesting. But overall, probably we'll have more about the AGM and the Celtic Report podcast will be out at the start of the week. We've already recorded this week's one, that should be out tonight. So that's something we'll obviously touch on at the weekend. Let's move on to Pedro Martinez Losa, the Scotland women's manager, has announced his squad for the Nations League games against Belgium and England next month. Just a few bits of information regarding that, some recalls for that. We are seeing a few from the SWPL, a lot of recalls as well. Just looking through them just now, just to see what the 3 Bristol City players make it. For example, Wayne Rogers, Jamie Lee Napier, Abby Harrison. Some recalls that we see here, like a lot of clubs. I think 8 SWPL clubs. Sam Kerr, Brogan Hay, Abby Harrison, and Emma McCandy all return to the squad. So Scotland will play Belgium and Leuven next Friday before hosting England at Hampden 4 days later. That'll be a big occasion. Obviously, it's damage limitation for Scotland in the Nations League, but it's obviously anytime Scotland play England, it's going to be a huge occasion. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Some obviously it's been retweeted on the Twitter channel, so go and have a look at that. And that's something obviously big games coming up for Scotland in the women's game in the next couple of weeks. On to a striker who left Scotland but is maybe looking for a return back is Kevin Van Veen. Kevin Van Veen was interviewed during the week, and he said about that he's opened the door to a return to Scotland. This was obviously a return to his native homeland, Holland, in the summer. He hasn't had the best time there. He's had a bit of a difficulty with the manager at Groningen in the second division. Van Veen's about to become a father and doesn't want to leave his newborn in Scotland. He did also mention something interesting as well. He said Rangers were one of many clubs who were sniffing about him in the summer. He went for 500 grand, and I know a lot of Rangers fans have said, "Oh, this is one that got away." I don't know if potentially Kevin Van Veen is Rangers level, but I do think he will, especially if he was to end up back at Motherwell, he could just be the difference maker for them again. He was the reason they got as high a finish last season, getting to Europe. I think Van Veen's a massive player for anybody in Scotland. I think that a lot of Scottish clubs, there'll be a few English clubs as well that'll be looking at him, but this could be an opportunity. If he's wanting to come back in loan, if he's looking to get back into Scottish football, this could be his chance, and it could be certainly something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks. A couple of bits of Rangers news. It's understood that Ridvan Yilmaz, the Turkish left back, is weighing up his future at Rangers. According to a report, his agent has been looking to see if there's an improvement there. They'll hold talks with the club this week. A few European clubs are said to be looking at bringing him in January. I think with Ridvan Yilmaz, it's very simple. He needs to get a run of games. He's obviously been frustrated with his lack of game time, but he has been injured, and the previous manager obviously really fancied Borna Barisic. I think one of the big things that will be going through Ridvan Yilmaz's head, and fair enough to him, is he's probably came to Ibrox based on the European games and the chance to put your face out in the shop window in European football, and he gets left out of the Europa League squad. I mean, things like that, just you wonder, how does that impact a player, particularly a young player who's came for a lot of money, who'll be looking to move his career on, and he gets left out of Europa League squad. So he will be asking that question, fair enough to him. I think he's a good player. I think he's got a future at Rangers. I think the manager, Philippe Clement, seems to really rate him. I think he's got the disadvantage. Obviously, his height is a problem that I think a lot of Rangers fans have addressed in recent weeks, particularly the goal against Hearts, where he's kind of leapfrogged actually by Lauren Shanklin for the goal. But I think he does have a future. I think he's a promising talent. Another promising talent at Rangers just now who could be linked with a move away is young Ross McCausland, the Northern Irish international. He is said to be generating interest from two clubs in Serie A. Roma and Atalanta are said to have expressed an interest in him. He obviously has I think his contract is running out in the next few weeks, so Rangers will be desperate, I think, in the next few weeks to tie him down to a new long-term deal. It obviously protects an asset as well. Rangers could lose him for kind of 400 or 500 grand. He could go on to be a superstar, and it's one of those that go away again. And there's been too many of that for a lot of teams in Scottish football, but Rangers in particular, obviously, like Billy Gilmore been one as well, who left for literally nothing. We're seeing it in kind of recent years as well with the likes of Ben Doak. I know the Celtic did get a wee bit of money for Ben Doak, but he could go on, if he's to do what we think he's going to do, he could go on and be sold for a lot more, and Celtic will probably not get a lot out of that. So Ross McCausland is certainly one to keep an eye on. I think he will get a run of games for Rangers. I thought he was magnificent, particularly when he came on against Sparta Prague in the Europa League. I think he's a player Rangers could be really doing with. He's got the advantage as well. He's a wide player in a team that doesn't have a lot of width, and the manager wants to go down that direction. So I think that's something that the manager will be desperate to sort that out. I think Ross McCausland, he'll be. I obviously when you hear clubs like Roma and Atalanta and Italian league, it does appeal to you, but I think he might be a player. Just hearing what I've kind of heard about him in recent weeks as well, I think he's a player who is desperate to get a chance at Rangers, and I think he's going to. So I think he's going to be a player to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this. But I think if Rangers are looking to secure him in a long-term contract, he's out of contract in the summer. I think Rangers need to get that tied down ASAP or risk losing him for nothing. SFA President Mike Mulroney was interviewed by the Daily Mail yesterday, and he said something that got a lot of attention. He was asked about the criticism of VAR in recent weeks, and he said he believes the Scottish referees are doing an amazing job as the Premiership continues adapting to the video assistance. Wow. I don't know if he's... I think that's a tough one, because he's not going to come out and say, oh, the referees are a disaster. He's not going to come out and say that. But nobody in British football right now is saying that VAR has been used right. And this isn't just Scotland, by the way. This is Scotland, England. It's not being used right in a lot of countries. But I think the big thing with VAR, and he does say a few good things as well about it. He says, obviously, when you consider VAR's been in for a year, he believes the referees are doing an amazing job. There have been mistakes, of course there has, but they have done an amazing job of finding a new way of refereeing. The one thing that I think needs to improve, and I think we'll speak about this kind of in the next few weeks, we're planning a podcast on the channel about it, is the time it's taken for simple decisions. Well, I can understand if things are can be perceived two different ways, yeah, it's going to take time for them to be kind of ironed out, but there's decisions in there that look relatively simple when you see them slowed down and they're still taking 5 minutes. And that, when you're at a stadium and you're seeing that, it must be frustration, but it is, like, I am a big advocate of the technology, but it needs to be used right. It needs to be used in a way that it makes it more appealing to the viewer. It makes it more appealing to the players as well. And it's one thing. It's something that's going to obviously it's here to stay. It's never going to go away. VAR's not, despite a lot of people wanting it shut down and removed, and it does need adapted. It does need a lot of changes to it. It does need, I think the referees need to be brought a bit more up to date with it, but It's not one of those things that's going to go away just now. So I think it's very honest to come out and say. I wouldn't necessarily say. I don't think it's changed the standard of refereeing in Scotland. I still think it's symbolic, but it's a tool that needs to be used right, and I think it is fair that he's going to come out and praise his referees and how well they've adapted to it. People like me are quite critical of referees, and the way they're treated is shocking. Like we're still in this day and age where referees are lambasted for decisions they get right just because they're made against a certain club. So that is something that is going to need to change in terms of kind of football in the next few years. But with VAR, I think it's something that could be beneficial. I think it needs to be used right. I think there needs to be a bit more education, and again, just make it a better concept. Make it better for the viewer, the punter, as we say. Like, we're the ones that are waiting 5 minutes for a 30-second decision to be made, and it just means better communication. I thought as well, one of the things that stood out a couple of weeks ago was when Livingston were playing Rangers in the Premiership, and obviously that was a day where VAR was quite busy. The commentator, who was not Ian Crocker, who was somebody that came up from England, who's I think quite a good commentator, he was saying what the video referee was saying in his earpiece. They've got a direct earpiece to that, and I thought it was a bit better in terms of communication. We haven't seen that in terms of, like, obviously famously Andy Walker was talking nonsense when he was talking about it, and when the VAR and got himself into a bit of trouble. So it's something that needs to be. I think VAR can be such a good tool, but it has to be used correctly. But I'm quite surprised that he's been that vocal in his support. I think it is something that needs addressed. But again, it's something VAR. We could debate it to death, but that's where we're at just now. And I think Mike Mulroney has obviously been very honest there. A couple of bits of news. Obviously, we had 2 League 2 games last night. Bonnyrigg beat East 5 4-2. Really interesting game. Obviously, 2 penalties for Bonnyrigg. That takes Bonnyrigg up to 5th in the league. They're sitting at 18 points, only 2 points off Spartan, so that's a massive 3 points for them. Massive 3 points for Elgin City as well. They won 1-0 at home to Forfar. McClement with the goals. Jones missed a penalty for them as well. That obviously gives Elgin a bit of breathing space in 9th place. They're now 5 points clear of Clyde, who sit bottom and 10th with 7 points. They're 2 big wins as well, and it's obviously gives them a degree of confidence. I don't think there's many games this weekend in League 2, obviously with the Scottish Cup, so we'll keep an eye on that. But big results there for Bonnyrigg and Elgin. Just another bit of news before we move on. Luncarty have announced Mark Baxter as their new manager. He'll take over as in charge of the East of Scotland Premier Division side, who sit 15th in the league. That's a big appointment for them. And that'll do us for this week's episode of the Scottish Football Daily News, your Wednesday edition. We'll be back tomorrow, where hopefully we'll have some more news to talk about. And enjoy the rest of your day, folks. We will be introducing the Celtic report. Will drop tonight, and we've also got a new episode of the Scottish Women's Football Show. Myself and my new permanent co-host Suzanne Mulvey will be talking about the action in the 4 women's leagues over the past few months since the season started. So stay tuned for that, and you might have seen an announcement on the channel yesterday that we are going to be looking into a permanent kind of production of the channel. I'll be announcing more of that on Thursday. It's been great to have your support so far, and we're hoping we can get your support, get into the next level of our content creation. Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.